For years, the Jeffrey Epstein case has been this maze of questions and conspiracies. But recently, the government dropped what was supposed to be a bombshell: 3.5 million pages of internal files promising real answers. So let's try to cut through all the noise and figure out what this mountain of data actually tells us.
And that's really the core question here, isn't it? With almost 3.5 million pages of files released by the Department of Justice, what did we actually learn? Was this the big moment of accountability everyone was waiting for, or did it just make an already confusing story even murkier?
You know, it's hard to even wrap your head around that number. 3.5 million. This wasn't just a document dump, it was a total avalanche. We're talking 3.5 million pages, plus over 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. It's less like a single case file and more like a massive, sprawling archive of an entire criminal enterprise.
So why now? Well, the reason for this massive release was a federal law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which basically forced this disclosure. Officially, the Department of Justice, the DOJ, said its goal was simple: to finally come clean with the American people about what the government knew all along. And that was the official line from the DOJ, a final step to deliver transparency. But this is where you start to see this huge disconnect between that stated goal and what a lot of people feel was the actual result.
Because while the DOJ did deliver the documents, they also unleashed what many have called a data tsunami. By dropping such an overwhelming amount of information all at once, they may have created a brand new kind of barrier for anyone actually trying to get to the truth.
And that leads to the main criticism leveled against the DOJ. It's this idea called obfuscation by scale. Basically, it's the theory that you can hide the truth right out in the open just by burying it in a disorganized mountain of data. Lawmakers and watchdog groups argue the sheer volume wasn't a feature. It was a bug that became the ultimate obstacle to real understanding.
So what exactly was in this massive data dump? Well, it was a real mix of things. You've got investigative records, you've got internal emails flying between different government agencies, Epstein's own scheduling materials, and like we said, thousands of videos and images. But maybe most importantly, there was a drafted but never filed indictment from 2007, and we are definitely coming back to that.
All right, now for the part that made all the headlines, the powerful and famous names that popped up. But before we get into any of that, there is a really critical piece of context we have to get straight.
So this is absolutely crucial. The DOJ itself has been very, very clear that just because a name appears in these files, it does not mean that person is guilty of anything. A lot of these names just show up incidentally, maybe in old news clippings or as part of completely unverified third-party claims.
Okay, one of the highest profile names to surface was Elon Musk. In some emails from back in 2012, we see Epstein trying to set up a visit for Musk to his private island. In one of those exchanges, Musk seems to ask, "What day/night will be the wildest party on your island?" Musk, for his part, has forcefully denied ever visiting the island or doing anything wrong. He publicly called Epstein a creepy loser and basically said if he wanted to party, he certainly wouldn't need Epstein's help to do it. Former President Donald Trump's name shows up. A lot. We're talking tens of thousands of mentions across thousands of different files. Now, these range from totally mundane things like contact info all the way to some serious, unverified allegations, the credibility of which his administration denied at the time.
Former President Bill Clinton is another name that comes up frequently. During a deposition in 2016, Epstein was asked over a dozen questions about Clinton and his private island. And for every single one, Epstein pleaded the fifth, which, is the right to refuse to answer to avoid incriminating yourself.
And the list just gets weirder from there, really showing how wide his network was. You see emails from royalty like Sarah Ferguson. You've got questions from an NFL owner asking about whether women were pro or civilian, and even a diary from a woman claiming she had Epstein's child, which his family denies. It just paints his picture of a truly bizarre and sprawling social web.
But beyond all the powerful names, a lot of people argue that the single biggest failure of this release had nothing to do with billionaires or presidents. It had everything to do with the victims. Instead of protecting them, the release process itself actually caused profound harm. I mean, this quote from the attorneys who represent Epstein's survivors, it says everything. They called the release the single most egregious violation of victim privacy in one day in United States history. That is just a devastating assessment of a process that was supposed to bring transparency.
So how did it go so wrong? Well, it basically happened in 3 disastrous steps. First, the documents went live, but the redactions failed, exposing victims' names and their personal information. That, of course, led to step 2, the DOJ scrambling to pull thousands of files back offline. But the damage was done, which brings us to the 3rd step, where survivors began reporting that they were being harassed almost immediately.
And all of this brings us to what is maybe the most frustrating theme of this whole thing. We have all this new information, right? All these unsettling details are laid bare for the whole world to see.
And yet, has any of it led to any real consequences?
Remember that 2007 draft indictment I mentioned? Well, this timeline shows a massive missed opportunity. For crimes committed between 2001 and 2005, federal investigators had actually drafted a broad indictment against Epstein and 3 other people. But it was never filed. Instead, Epstein got that infamous non-prosecution agreement, a deal that let him dodge major federal charges, serve a short sentence, and get right back to his life.
And this chart, well, it just puts the whole situation into stark relief. On one side, you have this mountain of information, 3.5 million documents. And on the other side, the legal result of reviewing all of that? 0. A big, fat 0 in new federal charges. The gap between what was revealed and what was done about it is just immense.
So you're left with these two completely opposite points of view. On one hand, you have the DOJ insisting it followed the law, it complied with the statute, and as far as they're concerned, this review is over. But on the other hand, you have critics saying that a massive, disorganized data dump is not real transparency, and that this whole process actually made finding answers harder, not easier.
And this quote from the Deputy Attorney General really seems to be the final word from the government. After reviewing everything, their conclusion is that there was nothing in the files that would let them successfully prosecute anyone else. So for now, it seems like accountability is just frozen in time.
And so we're left with this final, really unsettling question. The files are now open for the whole world to see. But with no new charges filed and so many questions from victims still unanswered, you have to wonder, is the case for actual justice now permanently closed?